She was hired as a housekeeper and uncovered a doctor's terrifying secret. Imagine starting your new job and realizing, between small chores and wary glances, that something is deeply wrong in that house. A quiet boy, a doctor with a smile that feels a little too perfect, and a father who trusts the wrong people. What seemed like an ordinary job soon turns into a mystery no one dares to talk about, one that could cost far more than a job. Subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. A light drizzle fell over the streets of Boston, blending with the hum of cars and the distant murmur of old brick buildings. Maya Torres climbed the steps of number 186 on Beacon Street, her cleaning uniform folded neatly in her bag and her heart pounding fast. She had gotten a call that morning from a cleaning agency desperate to fill a last-minute position. The client was a widower with an 8-year-old son and a house far too big to manage alone. The pay was good, the address impressive, and Maya needed the money. When she pressed the doorbell, the gate opened automatically, revealing a narrow hallway bathed in warm yellow light. The air smelled of polished wood and something else, a silence that felt heavy. The house had been built to impress, yet it radiated a quiet kind of sorrow. A tall man in a suit appeared at the door, his expression tired. It was Graham Whitaker, the owner. He explained calmly that his former housekeeper had taken a leave of absence, and he needed someone to keep the house in order. He spoke without warmth, like a man long accustomed to living by obligation. Graham led her into the kitchen, where everything looked meticulously arranged. No cups out of place, no sound but the ticking of a clock. As he showed her around, he mentioned his son, Oliver, and his tone softened slightly. The boy had been homeschooled ever since the accident that took his mother's life 2 years earlier. He didn't elaborate, only adding that the speech therapist came 3 times a week and that Maya should avoid entering the room during their sessions. As they climbed the stairs, small footsteps echoed above them. Graham glanced up. "That's probably Oliver with his therapist," he said. Moments later, a woman came down the stairs holding a leather briefcase and wearing a polite smile. "Brooke Halloway," she introduced herself. She was elegant, soft-spoken, and carried herself with quiet authority. "Have you worked in homes where children require extra patience?" she asked smoothly. The question sounded odd, but Maya simply replied that life had taught her patience. Brooke nodded, wished her luck, and left the front door, her perfume lingering faintly in the air. As the hours passed, Maya cleaned and observed. There was something unnervingly still about the place. The windows were always closed, the rug showed no footprints, and the toys seemed positioned more for display than play. Everything in that house carried an absence she couldn't quite define. When she finished the kitchen, she decided to empty the hallway trash bins. Passing by the office, she heard Graham on the phone, firm, discussing investments and deadlines. Upstairs, a faint noise caught her attention. It wasn't a toy nor TV. When she approached the staircase, she saw a boy halfway down, watching her silently. His brown hair was slightly messy, his oversized blue sweatshirt hung loosely on his small frame, and his eyes darted away each time she looked at him. Maya smiled gently and went back to work. The boy said nothing, stepped down one stair, then slipped through a half-open door. That brief moment was enough for her to sense a fragility hanging in that house, something no one wanted to name. Later, while wiping the floors in the hallway, Maya saw Oliver again. He sat quietly on the rug, rolling a small metal toy car in his hand, completely lost in thought. The sound of the front door opening interrupted the stillness. Graham had returned, accompanied by Brooke, who carried a bag filled with books. As soon as they stepped closer, Oliver dropped the toy and pulled his shoulders in. Brooke smiled at him sweetly, calling his name, but the boy only stood and slowly walked away. His whole body tensed whenever she came near. Graham didn't notice. He was too busy talking to her about progress reports and milestones while his son disappeared down the hallway. Maya caught it all from the corner of her eye. It wasn't obvious fear, more like quiet resistance. When Brooke turned toward her and said, "Clean the room only when I tell you," her voice was gentle, but unnaturally so. Maya simply nodded, understanding that this woman held more control in that house than anyone else. Her shift ended close to 6. The Boston sky had turned gray, and a cold wind slipped through cracks in the old windows. Graham thanked her, paid in cash, and asked her to return the next day. Maya gathered her things but decided to mop the upstairs corridor before leaving. The fading daylight filtered through the narrow windows, and for a second she thought she saw a shadow move behind Oliver's door. She didn't want to intrude. She wrung the mop, listened to the sound of water dripping into the bucket, and tried to shake off the unease building inside her. The house was beautiful, yet something about it felt wrong, especially when Brooke was around. When she finished, she closed the door quietly and headed downstairs. The clock in the living room ticked heavily, each sound stretching time, as if the house existed apart from the rest of the city. Maya slipped on her coat, opened the door, and felt the cold air rush against her face. Outside, the streetlights reflected on puddles, turning the wet pavement into a shimmering mirror. Maya walked to the bus stop, her mind racing. She kept replaying the image of Oliver clutching his toy car, his eyes distant and uneasy whenever the speech therapist was near. That wasn't simple shyness. It was as if the boy had learned to disappear every time that woman entered the room. She didn't know their story and had no right to judge, but something in that house demanded attention. As she waited for the bus, she turned back. The mansion's windows were still lit, motionless, like eyes watching the world without belonging to it. She boarded the bus, the engine humming beneath her feet, and told herself it was just another temporary job. Yet something inside her already knew better. A quiet alert, a sense that the house on Beacon Street had stories not yet ready to be told, and a little boy who hadn't yet found a way to ask for help. The next morning, the sun peeked shyly through the clouds, lighting up the brick facades of Beacon Street. Maya arrived early, before the agreed time. The spare key was hidden under the doorframe, just as Graham had mentioned. She entered quietly, calling his name, but no one answered. The house was still, with only the clock ticking in the distance. On the kitchen table sat a tray with 2 half-empty coffee cups and a few crumbs of bread, a sign that Graham and the speech therapist had shared breakfast. The image lingered in her mind as she began her work. The air felt heavier than the day before. She opened the windows to let in the morning breeze and gathered damp towels left in the guest bathroom. Passing by the staircase, she saw Oliver sitting on the steps, arms wrapped around his knees. His eyes were fixed on nothing, and his small face showed quiet exhaustion. Maya approached gently and asked if he was all right. He didn't respond, just stood up and walked back to his room, dragging his left foot slightly. There was something about the boy that carried invisible fear, the kind no one else seemed to notice. Moments later, Graham came down, dressed sharply and clearly in a hurry. He thanked her for arriving early and said he'd be out the office all day. Lunch wasn't necessary. He added, Brooke would be coming by in the afternoon for Oliver's session. His tone was polite but distracted, the kind of indifference that comes from trusting the wrong people out of convenience. When the gate shut behind him, the house suddenly felt enormous. Maya finished cleaning the living room and then heard something fall upstairs. She went up and found Oliver trying to gather a pile of books scattered on the floor. She helped him silently, careful not to intrude. As they both knelt, she noticed a fresh scratch along his arm. She asked what had happened, but he just shrugged. His gaze flickered nervously, as if afraid of being overheard. There were older marks too, faint but visible, and his small hands trembled slightly. Maya said nothing. She simply helped him arrange the books and stepped back, giving him space. That quiet moment was enough to tell her Oliver wasn't just a quiet child. He was someone who had learned to hide what he felt. That afternoon, Brooke arrived again, smelling of the same strong perfume and smiling that same polished smile. She greeted Maya with studied warmth, complimenting the shiny floors and the scent of soap. Carrying a folder and a bag filled with colorful papers, she explained she brought new exercises to stimulate speech. Maya watched from the hallway as the woman climbed the stairs to the boys' room. Nearly an hour passed before something heavy hit the floor again. Then came a muffled sob, faint but unmistakable. Brooke's voice followed, firm yet overly sweet, the kind of tone used to disguise authority as calm. Maya froze on the stairs, torn between the urge to intervene and the instinct to stay out of it. Minutes later, Brooke descended, her face serene, announcing that the session had ended early. She claimed Oliver had been irritable and that his behavior always worsened when there were new people around. Her eyes lingered on Maya, the message clear. Maya didn't reply. She just went to the kitchen, pretending nothing was wrong, though her chest felt tight. The rest of the afternoon passed in uneasy quiet. Brooke settled into Graham's office, writing on a clipboard, while Oliver stayed in his room. At 5 o'clock sharp, she announced her departure. Before leaving, she handed Maya a list of supplies to buy the next day, including a supplement she described as a vitamin for focus and calm. The name sounded strange, but Maya wrote it down anyway. Once Brooke was gone, she decided to check on the boy. She knocked softly, waited, and when there was no reply, pushed the door open just enough to peek inside. The room was dim, the curtains drawn tight. Oliver lay curled up under the blanket, face half hidden. On his desk sat a glass of liquid, half full. Maya called his name again, but he pretended to sleep. His body looked tired, yet his hands trembled faintly, not from rest, but from tension. She turned off the hallway light, closed the door quietly, and walked away with a knot in her stomach she couldn't explain. By the time Graham returned, night had fallen. His expression carried the fatigue of a long day. Maya mentioned that Oliver seemed unwell. Graham nodded, saying the therapy sessions were emotionally draining. The words sounded rehearsed, as if borrowed directly from Brooke. While they spoke, a faint sound came from upstairs, half sob, half breath. Graham pretended not to hear, ending the conversation with a polite thank you and a request that she close the windows before leaving. Maya obeyed, but she lingered listening. When she went upstairs to collect her cleaning supplies, she noticed the glass on Oliver's desk was now empty. The liquid had been milky white, not quite like milk, with a sweet chemical scent. She placed it in the sink, staring for a long moment. Something was wrong. She just didn't know where to start looking. The calm inside the house felt like a carefully pulled curtain over a place that was silently screaming underneath. Outside, rain had begun again, soft, turning the cobblestone slick with reflections of streetlights. Maya walked slowly toward the bus stop, trying to make sense of her thoughts. The image of Oliver curled in bed and Brooke's fixed smile replayed in her mind like two pieces of a puzzle that didn't fit. It was too soon to draw conclusions, but her instinct whispered that Brooke's control went beyond therapy. It was in the air, the routines, the way everyone moved around her. As the bus approached, Maya looked back at the house. Only the upper floor was lit, the glow flickering unevenly, as though someone were moving from room to room. She leaned her head against the window once aboard, eyes half closed, picturing the boy awake in the dark, watching the same reflections from inside. No words were spoken, yet the message hung heavy in the air. That house was hiding something, and the silence inside it was becoming impossible to ignore. Mornings on Beacon Street began to settle into a rhythm that seemed to bring a bit of life back into the once sterile house. Maya arrived early, opened the windows, and let the scent of coffee mix with that of warm pancakes, while Oliver sat at the table with his sketchbook. The boy had learned to communicate in silence, writing short notes and drawing scenes from daily life. When he wanted dessert, he drew a slice of cake. When he wanted to rest, a simple bed. It was his way of speaking without words. Graham often watched with quiet surprise. He spent most of his time in his office, yet found excuses to pass through the kitchen, claiming he needed more coffee but staying to see his son smile. The image of a man who once feared noise now watching his child stir batter with a wooden spoon felt like the beginning of something healing. And Maya stood between tenderness and caution, knowing each gesture required care to avoid crossing invisible lines. On the days Brooke didn't appear, the air itself seemed lighter. Oliver became more curious, more playful, sometimes even whispering short sounds that hinted at progress. Maya never pushed him. She simply responded as if it were the most natural thing in the world. But the calm didn't last. Brooke began showing up unannounced, at unpredictable hours. Sometimes in the morning, claiming she had moved the session earlier, other times at night, saying she needed additional observations. Her smile never changed, but her tone had. It grew firmer, more controlling. One afternoon, she stepped into the kitchen, and found Maya and Oliver making a pie together. She pretended to find it charming, but her next comment landed like a warning disguised as advice. She said strong emotional bonds could interfere with speech rehabilitation and create dependency. Maya kept washing dishes, silent. Brooke turned to Oliver with her practiced sweetness. "Would you rather play," she asked, "or stay with a new lady?" The boy lowered his head, quiet. The tension in the room thickened instantly. Brooke smiled, satisfied, gathered her papers, and led him upstairs. The sessions began lasting longer. Doors stayed shut, and the sounds coming from upstairs didn't always seem like therapy. Sometimes Maya heard Brooke's voice, sharp, impatient. Other times, it was the kind of silence that felt staged. When a woman finally came down, she carried pages of notes and her usual false praise, claiming the boy was improving but needed a more controlled environment. That evening at dinner, Graham mentioned Brooke's new proposal, a children's rehabilitation clinic in Vermont, where Oliver could receive intensive treatment away from painful memories. His words were uncertain, rehearsed, as though he were repeating something Brooke had told him. Maya listened respectfully, but unease rose in her chest. Sending the boy away sounded less like care and more like convenient escape. Graham didn't seem convinced either. He ended dinner in silence, staring at his plate, while Oliver pushed food around without eating. The next day, Brooke arrived with 2 paper bags and a pleased expression. She said they were supplements and vitamins to help with focus. She handed Maya a list of instructions and asked her to store them in the kitchen. The bottles looked odd. Faded labels, smudged lettering, expiration dates almost erased. Maya noticed but said nothing. She wrote down the names on a separate slip of paper. A few hours later, Oliver complained of headaches and nausea. Brooke, still there, blamed stress and said his body was reacting to emotional strain. She mixed a drink and insisted he finish it. Maya watched quietly, uneasy. Once the boy went upstairs, she checked the bottles against Brooke's list. 2 of them weren't on it, and the liquid inside smelled sweet, unlike any vitamin she'd seen. She folded the paper with the names and slipped it into her pocket. The symptoms persisted over the next few days. Oliver slept longer, waking disoriented. Brooke explained away his exhaustion, a good sign of progress. Graham accepted her reasoning. But Maya noticed a difference. When Brooke wasn't there, Oliver played, drew, and even wrote her funny notes. The moment Brooke entered, his body stiffened, his eyes went distant, and he retreated to his room. It was too consistent to be coincidence. The house, once slowly regaining warmth, seemed drained again. The silence returned, dull and uneasy. Maya didn't yet understand what was happening, but instinct told her the answer was hidden among the bottles and Brooke's visits. Late that night, after everyone was asleep, she crept downstairs, opened the cabinet, and took one jar under the dim kitchen light. The label's letters were blurred, and for the first time since she'd arrived, Maya felt real fear. The next morning, Oliver came to breakfast pale, dark circles under his eyes. Maya served him pancakes and offered milk, but he pushed the glass away abruptly. His eyes darted toward the cabinet where the bottles were kept, then back to her. It lasted only a second, but it was enough to confirm her suspicion. Minutes later, Brooke entered. Same perfume, same perfect smile, greeting Oliver in her syrupy voice. Maya replied politely, keeping her focus on wiping the counter. Graham soon joined them, and Brooke brought up again the intensive program in Vermont, repeating her speech about long-term results. Graham nodded weakly, thanking her for her dedication. From across the kitchen, Maya slipped her hand into her pocket, feeling the folded note with a list of names. She still had no proof, only fragments, but she had seen fear before, and she knew the kind that lived in silence. Oliver, without saying a word, was already telling her everything she needed to know. The following weeks unfolded in a strange rhythm, as if time inside that house had slowed down. Oliver slept more and more. Sometimes Maya found him at the table, head tilted forward, fighting to keep his eyes open. Other times he'd doze off on the couch, limp and drained, startled whenever someone touched him. Words had nearly disappeared. The funny notes he once left around the house were gone, replaced by blank pages. Brooke claimed it was a natural phase of cognitive reorganization, that his brain was rebuilding memories. Graham repeated her words, soothed by her calm authority. But Maya saw beyond the surface. The boy's color had faded. His skin looked pale, his lips dry. When she suggested getting a second opinion, Brooks smiled tightly and warned that outside interference could delay results. It sounded less like advice and more like a threat. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She waited until she heard the gate close, signaling Brooks' departure, then sat at the table with the crumpled paper where she'd written the names of the supplements. She opened her old laptop and typed each one carefully. The page loaded slowly, and when the results appeared, her stomach turned cold. The medication was prescribed for severe insomnia and adult anxiety disorders, with high risk of dependency and extreme drowsiness if used continuously. The dosage Brooke had given was small, but daily use could cause everything Maya had been seeing: apathy, delayed reflexes, tremors. She closed the laptop, folded the note, and slipped it into her pocket, breathing deeply as she tried to decide what to do. The next morning, she waited for Graham to come down for breakfast and told him what she'd found, choosing her words carefully. He listened silently, but when she mentioned Brooks' name, his expression hardened. He thanked her for her concern and asked her not to interfere in medical matters. He trusted the professional, he said, and treatment required patience. His tone ended the conversation. Maya understood then. She was on her own. Brooke began staying overnight. She said she needed to monitor the patient closely and arrived with a small suitcase, notebooks, and new bottles of supplements. Graham accepted it gratefully, relieved that someone seemed to take control. From that night on, the house lost all sense of normalcy. Brooks' footsteps echoed down the hallways deep into the night, even after the lights were out. Doors creaked open slowly. Sometimes Maya woke to the faint sound of whispering she couldn't quite make out. Oliver seemed to feel it too. He slept with the blankets pulled over his head and a flashlight hidden beneath his pillow. One night, Maya woke to find him in the kitchen, clutching a piece of paper. Startled, he ran off, dropping it on the floor. The note had shaky handwriting. She came when the lights went out. Maya's pulse raced. She checked the rooms upstairs. Brooks' door was wide open, her bed untouched. The woman reappeared in the morning, claiming she'd gone to check on Oliver after he had a nightmare. Maya said nothing, but at breakfast, the boy's eyes told her everything she needed to know. That afternoon, while alone, Maya decided to check the house's digital locks. Graham had shown her the system on her first day, explaining that each resident had a unique code. When she opened the records, her blood ran cold. There were multiple door openings between 2 o'clock and 3 a.m., all using Brooks' code. The woman had been moving through the house while everyone slept. Maya printed the report, hid inside a book in the laundry room, and started planning her next move. Over the next few days, she became more vigilant about meals and whatever Oliver drank. Still, he grew weaker. His hands trembled, his words slurred. Brooke was always ready with an explanation. His body was adjusting to stimuli. Graham, weighed down by guilt and grief for his late wife, couldn't see the danger. The silence in that house became unbearable. It felt as though the walls themselves were watching, complicit in something unseen. It happened on a Friday. Dinner was almost ready, the smell of roast meat filling the air. Graham was on a business call in the living room, Brooke supposedly working in the study. Oliver ate slowly, barely holding his fork. Maya watched him closely. Within minutes, his face turned pale. His hand began to shake, and his body slumped sideways. She ran to him, catching him before he hit the floor. Her scream made Graham drop the phone and rush in. The boy collapsed in his arms. Brooke appeared, feigning shock, claiming he must have taken his medicine by mistake. Chaos erupted. The ambulance arrived minutes later, the hallway flooding with paramedics. Maya never let go of Oliver's hand, whispering silent prayers. At the hospital, tests revealed traces of sedatives in his blood. Brooks' explanation didn't convince anyone. The nurse on duty, Hannah Clark, studied the file carefully and asked, "You said this woman is a speech therapist, right?" When Graham confirmed, her expression changed. She said she'd heard that name before. months earlier, in a similar case involving a child who showed the same symptoms during therapy. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Maya realized then that the danger hadn't come from outside. It lived under their roof, wore a professional badge, and had unrestricted access to everything. From that night on, the house was no longer just cold. It became something that watched, recorded, and concealed. The corridor cameras, the access logs, Brooke's perfectly composed demeanor, they all formed a web of manipulation. Maya began collecting evidence. Photos of the bottles, the door logs, the forged recommendations. She hid everything inside an envelope behind the washing machine. She knew she was risking her job, maybe her safety, but she couldn't stay silent any longer. Every smile from Brooke, every gentle gesture toward Graham was a calculated act. And at the center of it all was Oliver, growing weaker by the day, trapped between trust and deceit. Standing alone in the kitchen, Maya looked at her reflection in the dark window. Fear pressed against her chest, but beneath it, something else had taken root. The certainty that if she didn't act soon, the house would fall silent again. And this time, it might never speak. The return from the hospital brought attention that clung to the air like humidity. The walls, once merely silent, now seemed to shrink under the weight of what they had witnessed. Graham entered carrying his son, his body bent with exhaustion, his eyes hollow. Oliver slept, still under the effect of medication, while Brooke followed behind with the poised serenity of someone who always kept control of the scene. She thanked the staff, issued a few precise instructions, and as she crossed the doorway, her eyes locked on Maya's cold, calculated. She said that for the sake of recovery, the house needed peace. Too many people, she added, could interfere with treatment, and perhaps it would be better if Maya stepped away for a while. Graham, confused and worn out, simply nodded. The words fell over Maya like a sentence. She tried to argue, but his voice came weak, almost apologetic. "For now, it's best," he said. At the top of the stairs, Oliver stood watching, still silent. His gaze followed Maya to the door, and she felt as though she were leaving someone behind in danger, someone who couldn't ask for help. Outside, Boston's sky hung heavy with clouds and wind swept through the narrow street. Maya walked toward the gate without turning back, until something made her stop. She looked up and saw the window to Oliver's room. The curtain moved, and behind the glass, the boy appeared holding a sheet of white paper. He raised it just long enough for her to read the two hastily written words, "Don't stop." The message burned into her mind like a plea, a silent scream. She returned home trembling, unable to accept what was happening. That night, she didn't sleep. Instead, she planned, turning possibilities over in her head, searching for a way to help the boy without putting him at greater risk. By morning, she was at the clinic Brooke claimed to work at. The building was small, elegant, but the office was empty. The receptionist explained that the facility had closed months ago and that the practitioner no longer held an active license. The reason was public record: fraud, falsified reports, and the unlawful use of substances on patients. Maya's stomach twisted. Determined, she went straight to the hospital and found Hannah Clark. She told her everything. The nurse listened intently, her face tightening with alarm. She recalled a similar case, a child, same surname. Together they searched the archives for proof. Each document told the same story: manipulated reports, patient complaints, and an official suspension of Brooke's license. Maya placed the files carefully into an envelope, unsure of her next move. Fear pressed on her chest, but the memory of the boy's note wouldn't let her stop. That afternoon, she sat in a cafe near the station, writing a detailed letter explaining everything she knew. She didn't finish. Her phone vibrated across the table. A blocked number flashed on the screen. When she answered, a tense voice came through. "Ms. Torres, this is Nurse Hannah. You need to come to the hospital immediately. The boy's been readmitted. His condition is critical." The world dropped out from under her feet. When she arrived, the pediatric wing was gripped by a suffocating stillness. Graham sat with his head in his hands, motionless. Brooke was beside him, her expression perfectly composed, tears balanced like props. Maya approached carefully and asked what happened. Brooke answered first, her tone smooth, almost offended by the question. He must have mixed up his medication again. Children can be unpredictable. The casualness of her words made Maya's stomach turn. She looked at Graham, who only shook his head, lost. Maya asked to see the boy. Inside the room, the sterile air smelled of disinfectant and plastic. Oliver lay pale and still, his small body connected to tubes and wires. The monitor beeped softly beside him. Maya took his hand, faint, cold, and waited. Slowly, his eyes opened. He tried to speak, but couldn't. She understood immediately and asked for paper and pencil. Hannah brought them. With trembling fingers, Oliver began to write. The words came crooked, weak, but unmistakable. On the white hospital sheet, in shaky letters, it read, "She put it in the milk." Maya's heart pounded. She showed the note to Hannah, who read it silently and sprang into action. She ordered that the drink Brooke had brought earlier, claiming it would help with recovery, be collected for testing, and demanded absolute discretion. Maya stayed by the boy's side, brushing his hair gently as his eyes closed again. His face softened, tired but relieved. Outside, Brooke paced the hallway, speaking to doctors, performing concern. Graham sat slumped, clinging to denial, convinced it was another accident. Hours later, the results came back. The same sedative found weeks earlier was present in the milk sample. The findings struck like a final verdict. Hannah quietly alerted security and called the police. Maya asked for a few minutes alone with Graham before they arrived. She led him into the staff lounge and handed him the envelope, the documents, the note, the digital lock records. She spoke calmly, without hysteria, but every sentence felt like tearing open a wound. She told him she had trusted him in the house, believing goodness could live there, but now understood the danger had always been inside. She explained the nighttime access logs, the altered bottles, the lies, the revoked license. Graham listened without interrupting. His hands trembled, his breath shallow. When he finally looked at Maya, his face had changed completely. Guilt, grief, a dawning awareness that shattered him. The world he thought was safe was collapsing in front of him, and the woman he'd trusted most was about to be exposed for what she truly was. Dawn broke over Boston with a pale light that filtered through the hospital windows, hanging between relief and fear. Graham had spent the night in the same armchair, elbows resting on his knees, eyes fixed on the floor. Maya hadn't left Oliver's room. She watched the machines as if the steady rhythm of the monitor were the only thing keeping the boys safe. Brooke hadn't appeared that morning. She had said she would return after sorting out some legal matters related to the treatment, a silent admission of guilt. The police arrived quietly, led by Hannah into a private room. Maya handed over the envelope containing everything she had gathered: falsified reports, digital lock records, prescription copies, and the ink-stained note written on the hospital sheet. One of the detectives, calm but grave, asked if Graham confirmed the woman's connection to the family. His answer came rough and hollow. "I trusted her as if she were part of this house." The weight in his voice said more than any confession could. By noon, Brooke was arrested in the hospital parking lot, trying to drive away with her car full of files and personal belongings. When the officers approached, she still attempted to talk her way out, calling it all a misunderstanding. But the evidence surrounded her. The carefully composed mask she always wore cracked the moment the arrest warrant was read aloud. Graham stood at a distance, motionless, as if waking from a long, poisoned sleep. Maya, beside him, kept her expression steady, though inside she felt a rush of exhaustion mixed with relief. It was over, the end of something that had quietly devoured them all for months. Watching the police car drive away, Hannah whispered, "How many families never found out?" No one answered. What mattered was that Oliver was safe, fragile, but beyond the reach of the woman who had turned their home into a cage disguised as care. The days that followed were slow, but filled with recovery. Oliver woke gradually, his eyes tracking the room, trying to understand why his father cried each time he opened them. Maya stayed close, helping the nurses without asking for thanks. Her presence had become something calm, grounding. When the doctor finally announced that Oliver was out of danger, Graham broke down completely. He apologized for his blindness, for his trust, for everything. Maya simply said, "He's safe now," And that was enough. Later that day, Hannah stopped by to say goodbye, leaving an envelope in Graham's hands. Inside was an official letter confirming Brooke's investigation and the confiscation of her fake medications. She would face charges for illegal use of controlled substances and professional fraud. The trial would take months, but the truth was finally out. When father and son returned to the Beacon Street house, the place felt smaller, emptier. The furniture remained the same, but the air was lighter. Maya helped open windows, change the sheets, and pack away every trace of Brooke's presence. Oliver, still weak but recovering, wandered from room to room as though rediscovering his own world. At one point, he stopped by the window where he had once held up the note that said, "Don't stop." He looked at Maya and smiled, a real smile, for the first time since the accident that had taken his mother. The soft sound of his laughter filled the room. Graham closed his eyes, as if that single sound could erase months of darkness. Maya sat nearby, watching the boy draw on the same sketchbook he'd once used to communicate. Now, he didn't need notes to be understood. When he spoke, his voice, still fragile, came out clear, steady, alive. As weeks passed, normal life began to return, though nothing was quite the same. Maya stayed on, now officially hired as a household assistant. Graham learned to be present again, devoting his time to his son, without strangers mediating their lives. Oliver regained his strength and appetite and began real therapy sessions at the hospital, with professionals who listened, not controlled. Each visit brought more confidence, more light. One afternoon, he gave Maya a drawing, 3 figures standing before a house, a large sun above them. Beside his father's figure was a woman with her hair tied back and a thin line connecting them all, as if to say that despite everything, something had survived. Maya tucked the drawing into her bag, without a word. She didn't need one. Months later, the Beacon Street home once again smelled of coffee and echoed with laughter. Oliver's room was painted blue, with new curtains fluttering in the breeze. Graham carried his guilt differently now, turning it into care. Maya remained part of their days, no longer as an employee, but as someone written into their story. One quiet evening, while the sun sank over the city and Oliver played in the garden, Graham joined her on the porch. "Thank you," he said, just that, but it held the weight of everything unsaid. Maya nodded softly, her eyes on the boy running across the grass, free, with no shadows lurking nearby. If there had been a camera, it would have lingered on the house. The gate closing slowly, the calm street outside, life gently settling where fear once lived. No more doors creaking open at night, no secret codes in the dark, only the sound that had been missing for so long filling the space, once again, the sound of being alive. The end. So, what did you think of this story? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to keep enjoying stories like this one. See you next time.